Hello, Bopani Lunn and Ben Lancaster. So the producer and the writer, were you the writer too?
Writer-director.
Writer and director
Yeah.
of Delivery. So I'm still under the shock. No, I watched it yesterday. We had this screen for Visiting England Festival, the big screen at the Cinema Kinépolis here in Rouen. And wow. I mean, a lot of people cried. It's very intense. It's full of very strong emotions. And that character there in the middle, supporting the whole film, which looked very frail, very fragile at the beginning, but she's so strong. And well, can you tell me about the history of this story you're telling us in this film, please?
So it began, Pani and I, we produced a film called Who's Counting, a short 5-minute drama prior to Delivery. It was a film based on our own experiences with recurrent miscarriage. And on that project we met Rosie Chappell, a midwife who was doing her training at the time. And she subsequently qualified as a midwife. We kept in touch. We had a great experience working with her on Who's Counting. She had a very small role in that film. We kept in touch, and when I saw that she had qualified as a midwife, I saw a picture of her dressed in her hospital scrubs on social media, and I just had this idea to approach her about a much longer film. The plan straight away was to make a longer short film about a midwife on a single shift. And I kind of pitched that idea to Pani. Pani thought it was a good idea, and we reached out to Rosie. And then Rosie came on board straight away. And over about a year, Rosie and I worked together using her lived experience as a midwife on UK maternity wards to develop a story about this character called Mary, who experiences the most challenging night shift of her career as she oversees 2 pregnancy cases in a hospital. So that was the kind of genesis of the project. It was very much a project that we took to Rosie, and we would only have done it that way, using her lived experience to tell a story that was completely authentic.
Yeah, so is it realistic in a way? Because it looks very technical. I mean, everything looks real. And so that was one thing that you wanted to do, is to, at the same time that you convey a lot of emotion, what you wanted to do, I guess, is to make it very professional. And so it's like I mean, you teach people how to deliver a child. It's amazing.
Yeah. Authenticity was absolutely everything to us. We felt as though, because Rosie had given so much in terms of telling us about these experiences, she would voice note Ben after a shift and give him, obviously everybody was anonymous, but she would give him the details of what had happened, of cases. These were real people, these were real experiences that she was having with patients. We'd be doing them a disservice if we tried to glamorize or dramatize it in any way. We wanted it to feel real and authentic, and that bled through into absolutely everything. So it was not just the writing, the production design for us was so important. And Rosie continued with us in an advisory capacity, even in post-production. So the sounds that you can hear all the time, you know, we learned what noise the heartbeat machine should make when a baby is in trouble or when it's feeling healthier. We learned you know, what noises you would hear in different parts of the hospital and how loud they would be. Everything we tried to make as realistic as possible, because it's so visceral to be in that experience. Everyone who's been to a hospital knows, and you can smell, you can feel it, and that's what we very much wanted when we were making this.
Yeah, so in terms of production, it's very challenging, because you could not shoot in a real working hospital. You had to recreate it somewhere. So can you explain how you did it? Because it looks, I mean, it looks really authentic.
Thank you. I'm glad. Yeah, that was something that we committed a lot of time on. We had an incredible production design team as well, but we had 2 locations. One was a disused hospital unit, which was just an empty shell, empty rooms, and we brought everything into that. And then the second was a university that taught medical sciences, so they had the hospital equipment and everything there, but we had to kind of move all of their learning apparatus out of the way. So we had to just be very smart with how we scheduled so that we could use those different locations, because the corridors was a completely different space to the actual rooms that we went into. So it was a huge dance between the creative and production design as well.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the effect is perfect, I should say. And about the casting, I've got a question too, because I mean, you had really, I mean, real pregnant women, I guess, and the acting is great, and you wonder whether they're acting or not at some times, and the men present too are very good too. So can you tell us about the casting process and the fact that how you lead actors? Were they real actors?
Well, actually, it's great to hear you thought they were pregnant women, but not only were they not pregnant women, they'd never had babies before. Because Rosie, you know, she's a midwife, she hadn't done a huge amount of acting in the past. Obviously, she'd been in our short film, but this was a much bigger project than she had ever taken on before. And because we knew we wanted her in the middle of this as a, you know, essentially doing her job for a large part of the film, we knew that there would be, even though she was doing her job for a large part of it, there would be some really tough emotional moments and some moments of conflict with the other characters. And because of that, we made sure that we surrounded Rosie with trained actors in those supporting roles. So everyone else in the film around her is an actor who was cast for that specific role.
All right.
There were no rehearsals though, as well. Everybody had the script, but there was a lot of kind of looseness to that as well, wasn't there? Whereby you kind of let people take it.
And I guess the analogy I always use is when Rosie's doing her job as a midwife, she doesn't know who this couple is when they walk into a room. Yeah. So it was very much that, you know, we had a brief Zoom call between Rosie and the other actors, but very brief, and then no rehearsals. So then on the day when we were filming, the young couple, Isla and Charlie, who Mary, Rosie, is interacting with in the patient room, she's doing that. She's just doing her job. You know, it was scripted, but there was a certain degree of improvisation on Rosie's part, because she's just doing her job. She's doing the exam, she's doing those things that she would traditionally do day to day. And the way we set up each scene was we would allow each scene to play out for 2-3 minutes at a time. We wouldn't kind of jump around too much. So that allowed Rosie to move around the room, doing her job the way she would do traditionally, usually every day as a midwife. And the actors would respond to her as she was doing that. So it allowed Rosie to kind of really settle into the filming process, as the other actors obviously did what they do best.
All right, yeah, but she's a very good actress, because you've got a few shots of reaction, and so this is sheer acting. I mean, and or maybe she was reminiscing things she went through before, but it's very moving when you watch her reacting, and you can imagine what she's watching and what she's thinking, and really, I was quite impressed by her performance, I must say.
We had quite a few moments on set where she would just take a moment, because I think in her role, as is the message of the film, there's never that time to process that trauma. There's never that time to really reflect on what is happening on a day-to-day basis and the fact that you are in that life or death situation. She had a few moments with the actors and with myself whereby she just suddenly realised, this is the normative of what I do as well. So I think for her as well, it took a bit of time to adjust because it sort of opened a lot of emotions that she had been suppressing for a while too. So I think the emotional moments that you mentioned, as you say, she's really accessing a lot that was already there and that she could recall, but just hadn't addressed herself yet.
And we were very careful to schedule it so in a certain way.
Yeah.
So that scene I talked about, where she's in the room with the couple at the beginning of the film. That's the very first thing we shot, and we worked our way up to those much bigger emotional moments where she was, acting. She was having to draw on a lot of more emotional.
So you built.
The schedule,
so
we built
that
up to
she
it.
would be protected.
Yeah.
But the fact is, your film shows very well the fact that if they can hold the pressure, it's because you've got this succession of things, and you don't have time to think about what happened before. You do something else, and then when you've got a failure, you've got a success, and then you get back home, and that's when you start thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's. Once again, it's short films are amazingly difficult to do because you need to get people feel for the characters right from the start, and that's why we need the big screen, because it's easier to get into the film right from the start.
Yeah.
But the fact is, there is room for a feature film with that. So I'm sure you've thought about it. Can you tell us maybe of the idea you've got behind that, or?
Well, I think with Delivery, the short film, the intention was to make a good short film. That was the first and foremost. That's what we wanted to do.
You did it.
But we wanted to, hopefully use that as a proof of concept for something longer. But just to go back to kind of what you were saying about the her in the hospital and then having to go home, I think we designed the film very much, and you talked about the intensity, you felt yesterday in the cinema with that audience, seeing it on the big screen. The intention was to create that intensity. The intention was to create these two pregnancy cases that the character would go between. And to have the film unfold almost like a thriller. We wanted it to feel intense and thrilling, and for the audience to, with those cinematic devices of music and sound design and the handheld frenetic camera that stays really close to her, the whole intention behind all of those choices creatively was to put the audience in the mindset of the character, and to create those experiences that Rosie would tell us about, from being someone on the front line in one of these wards in the UK. And in terms of going home, one of the first things she said to me, Rosie, when we were talking about this project, was that she would come home at night to her two children, very much like the character in the film. She has two children herself. She would come home at night to her dark, empty house, or quiet house, house. After she said she'd walk into the empty hallway that would be dark, and she'd put her bag down, and she could hear the CTG, the heartbeat in her head, and that was the kind of creative spark that led to all of those other elements that you see in the film. That was the seed of the idea.
Yeah. Well, it's once again, it's really perfectly achieved. But I was wondering, it's so intense. If you want to make it longer, if you want to turn it into a feature film, you need to put some breathing space.
A little bit of relaxing.
It's really something which is very demanding for the audience when you watch it. I could see people felt really emotional at times, and so it certainly means that you will have to add a story around it, and so and any project of series maybe with something. I know that doctor or medical series have always been quite fashionable, so maybe you don't want to be part of a kind of fashion things, but because once again, you mentioned the NHS, saying that at the moment, people are talking about it. In this country too, we've got the same problems with our health structures. So it's a real problem for people now to get enough doctors not far from where you live, So do you feel that films can help people, be conscious of what's going on and make people move, or
That was very much our intention, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think in terms of it's interesting that you say it's quite a fashionable thing. There have always been medical dramas; they continue to exist. But I think what if we were to develop this further, whether it be a feature or a series in whatever form, we'd keep this idea of the perspective being from the midwife. That's something that we wanted to really pursue because we'd never really seen it before. And another reason why we made it is we'd had our first child and we'd gone through a delivery ourselves, and we found it so fascinating that there would be these people present on the most important day of your life, the time in which you're most afraid, you don't know what's going on, and as often a couple, you're put in this environment, in this situation that you've never been in, and we found it fascinating that they would come in, play such an important part, and then they disappear, they finish their shift, and they're not even there when you wake up the next day with the baby. So we found that as a character really interesting, and I don't think we've necessarily seen the midwife really in as much in film or TV. And also for us, and this is something that we've done in our previous short as well, the idea of birth, of fertility issues, how women, the language around birth and fertility as well, and how a lot of it is set up for women to feel like a failure quite often. That's something I think we really want to tackle as well. So I think it's looking at this medical drama in a new way and really focusing on women and the representation of birth that is different and hopefully a bit more real as well, I think.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for showing this film to our audience here, and I'm sure that you will be successful if you do a feature film out of that, no problem. And once again, everybody here thanks you for that.
Thank you for having us. And like I said last night, that was the best screen, the best sound we've heard so far, and it was so special to see so many people out there watching it as well. It really meant a lot to us.
So we can thank Quentin, who is our technician, for all the job he does for us.
Please do, it was amazing.
And the brilliant audience questions as well.
And the incredible subtitles as well. We met Cedric last night.
We wrote the questions for them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.